Hello everyone, and welcome to the English Teacher's Guide to GCSE Language. And today we're going to focus on how to create a perfect piece of creative writing, which currently will help you with your coursework and the exams, and in the future will help you with your exams. Before we begin, I've got two questions for you to see what you know, so that you know how best to use this video to help your understanding. Firstly, what skills do you need to include in any piece of writing to achieve perfect marks? And secondly, what should you include in a piece of creative writing to achieve perfect marks? Now pause this video very quickly and note down what you think the answer is, because if you don't know the answer to these questions, there's no possible way you can achieve perfect marks in your exam or for your current coursework. Okay, to achieve perfect marks for any piece of writing, whether it be for your coursework currently or for the exams, you should always include a plan. You should always make sure your piece matches the purpose, so you're writing to persuade, to advise, etc. Make sure the piece matches the genre perfectly. So today we're looking at creative writing, but do you know how to write a letter exactly correctly? Do you know how to write a leaflet or a report exactly how it should do? If you don't, then you need to revise. Use these videos I have to help you. Use a variety of sentence types. Make sure you use those sentences with different effects. So obviously a longer sentence, a complex sentence, can create a sense of boredom or a sense of impossibility. Use a variety of sentence starters. Don't always start with the same kind of words. Use a variety of complex punctuation. Again, use them to create an intended effect. Exclamation marks can show anger. It can show a lack of understanding as well. Consider formality. Is it formal or informal? Use different lengths of paragraphs. Spell all complex words correctly, but don't forget to spell the basic words first. And it's better to use complex words and get those wrong than it is to simply use simple words all the time, because you're not demonstrating to someone who doesn't know you how good you are. Make sure your text structure as a whole is effective, so your conclusions link back to your openings, for instance. Make the piece interesting. You know, the examiner's got 300 pieces of exam to mark, so if yours is boring, he's not going to be looking for the marks. But finally, you need to remember you have to show off your writing ability. The marker doesn't know who you are. The only evidence they have that you're any good is the work they have in front of them. So if I was to give you a football, for instance, and all you did was trap the ball, I wouldn't think you're very good at football. But if you were to do lots of different skills and tricks and kick-ups, I would instantly think you're a good footballer. The exam paper is exactly the same. You have to demonstrate, show off that you are good at it. Now, for creative writing, what do I need to include to create a perfect piece of creative writing? Obviously, you plan your content. You have to make sure your work has a beginning, middle and end, or a setting, problem, climax, resolution if it's going to be more complex. A setting is where you are. The problem is, what is the issue? So is the issue here that you've lost the princess and you have to rescue her, for instance. The climax is the main event that happens just before the ending, so the final battle. And the resolution, how does it end? So do you rescue the princess and everything's okay or not? Now, for a more engaging piece and a slightly more complex piece, what you might want to do is move the order around. So you might want to start off with the climax or resolution and then go back to the opening. So for instance, you might have, if we go with this princess story for instance, you'll never rescue the princess, there's no way you can do it. As he wielded his sword above my head, I thought that this was going to be the end. I was going to fail my mission and die horribly in this miserable place. And then you go back to the opening, new paragraph. It was a normal day like any other. However, I had no idea. You get the concept. Create openings and endings which engage the reader instantly. So it needs to be interesting straight away. Many writers say that you sell a book on the strength of the first 2 sentences, and that's the same with your coursework or the exam work. Excellent. Well, don't give the plot away too early. Hint at it, build up to it. If you give away what's going to happen too early, the piece doesn't have that sophistication required, you'll get a poor mark. But all excellent pieces of creative writing should also have these features within them. Interesting characters. And the way you can create interesting characters is through imaginative description of the way they look, the way they move. You use the 5 senses, so hear, touch, taste, and the others as well, that you need to make sure that you include. You need to think about how other characters interact with your character. Do they like them? Do they not like them? Because that tells us a lot about the characters. You might also use their history. Use the pathetic fallacy as well to help establish the tone or the mood of the piece. So if the weather is miserable outside, it suggests that this isn't going to be a happy tale. Use interesting similes and metaphors. That kind of descriptive imagery helps to create a more interesting piece. Don't forget your adverbs and adjectives. Now, very quickly, there are different ways that you can start and end your pieces. So you can start by setting the scene. It was a glorious day. You can start with the problem of the story. So, as I said, moving the structure around. This idea of a mystified opening. So you start a poem which doesn't instantly make sense. We as a reader are unsure of what's going on, and then you make that more obvious. You might have the narrator reflect on the events that they're about to describe, or you might also open immediately with dialogue. Types of endings that you could go with. You go back to the beginning, as we've kind of mentioned before. Have a twist or a surprise ending, so something that's not expected. A summary, again, the narrator reflects on what's happened. And positive or negative conclusions, so it's a happy ending, a sad ending, or an open or mysterious ending. Is it unclear what's going to happen in the future? Remember all those different techniques in your creative writing texts, and you're guaranteed to secure a really high, if not perfect, mark for the work. Now, let's an example of some kind of questions you would get. Now, in an exam, you might very well be asked to create a task such as this. Write an imaginative piece of descriptive writing based on one of the following titles: the lesson, the test, the playground, honest mistake. These could also currently be coursework titles that you might want to work with. So, I'm going to choose the lesson. I'm going to show you how I'm going to plan for this response, because that's what we need to do. So you can see at the start, I've written down the overall plot. I've only summarised it very briefly, but that will help me in the exam, because then I'll be able to remind myself of where I'm going with the story, because otherwise sometimes, if you're just writing and writing, you forget where you're trying to get to. I've also labelled the different sections: setting, problem, climax, resolution. Now, for the example I'm going to show you, I've gone with a chronological order, so it happens in time sequence. But I might have gone with the climax first. So what I would do in that instance is I would number the different sections. So I'd have climax as number 1, then setting as 2, problem as 3, climax as 4 as well, and then resolution as 5. I've included all the different types of punctuation, and as I write, what I'll do is I'll put a line through each piece of punctuation. And hopefully, when I go to proofread my work at the end, I'll have a line, at least one line, through each piece of punctuation. If I haven't done that, then I know I need to go back and include some of them. I've also included some of the complex vocabulary I want to use, and underneath, I've also written down some of the elements of A star I forget to do. There's no point in writing them all out, just write down the ones that you forget to do to help you. Okay, so there's my plan. That should take you no more than 5 minutes, really. It's all about generating the ideas, especially for creative writing. Once you have the ideas, you might even sketch out your characters. You might write a couple of notes about your character you want to use. That's up to you. But you need to have a plan, otherwise you're not sure of the direction you're going to be going in, and it helps to focus your mind. Okay, how do I get perfect marks? That's always what we should be thinking of all the time, not just poking our tongue out and writing as furiously as we can for half an hour. So, here's my piece. Rain. Heavy rain. It's been this way for the last few months, but I never understand why it only seems to happen once I enter the confines of this institution, this place of learning, as the all-powerful head calls it. So I've gone with first person narration, which means it's me, I am the character. I've used pathetic fallacy straight away. Horrible weather suggests this is going to be a miserable story. I used to enjoy the rain falling outside whilst the students sat in their perfect uniforms, leaning their heads in the way a puppy does when it doesn't quite understand something. I used to enjoy the banter of the pupils. I was once even considered to be funny, a legend by the students as I patrolled the corridors, looking out for anyone who even dreamed of breaking the rules. It is different now. So notice that simple paragraph on its own, that's really complex. It's also a nice simple sentence starter. Again, it's going to make the reader engaged. Why is it different now? Now the rain seems to tap repetitively at the glass throughout the day, not only making me feel trapped within this place, but when I look closer at the individual droplets of spit. Notice I've used spit, I'm varying the vocabulary, but spit sounds nasty as well. Just trying to build up that image of an unhappy situation. I can almost see tiny faces laughing at me. They seem to screech, "You're rubbish. No one likes you. Old and boring." But that's ridiculous, I tell myself more and more these days. I'm not old. Then it happens again. The knell echoes, which is a funeral bell, down the decrepit corridors. full of works as ancient as hieroglyphics, labelled by pupils who have not only left, but actually have terrors of their own. But that could mean they only left last year. So you can see from the narrative voice here, so the character's voice is someone that's jaded, someone that's unhappy, someone that basically hates working. I can hear them coming. So I'm building up that detail. You can see it's nothing's happened yet, I'm not giving anything away. I'm hinting. The footsteps and the riotous noise begins to ricochet off the primeval structure, becoming louder and louder. I take a deep breath of air into my lungs, gaze over my meticulous lesson plan, ignore the rain mocking me, and then move towards the door for another 50 minutes of purgatory. Entering the room like a pack of wild dingoes, they skulk to their seats without a hello sir or a, I read that book you recommended, it was great anywhere. Most lean back in their chairs as if this haven of learning I have created is their own private youth club. Others continue to read the brightly coloured and heavily pictured magazines that they have been allowed to use like a pacifier to soothe their teenage brains. Disrespectful though they were, I used to be able to handle those students, but there are a few who are different. They sit there with their uniforms shoddily put together in a way that suggests a deliberate attempt to oppose authority. Their exercise books, when they remember to bring them, are scrawled with the names of the girls they wish to produce the next generation of demons of disrespect with. Mandy forever, and Jenny's got big jugs. I blame their English teacher, only me it's failed them. Notice I've deliberately misspelt things to try and gain character. I am a failure. There's that type of paragraph again. The worst part of their persona is the stare. Their evil squinting eyes seem to be working me out like Shamu did just before he killed the trainers at SeaWorld. Even a place as heavenly as that has witnessed the annihilation of authority. Every lesson has descended into a battle, and clearly my wit and determination was no match for their blatant desire to systematically destroy me professionally and psychologically. You're a failure, the heavy rain now seems to shout at me as the students continue with their conversations and ignore the work that I had lovingly prepared. Notice I keep on going back to the rain, that image. That's called a motif, an image that I keep using all the way through. Class, my scream for attention and lack of a response felt like another slap in my already blistered and cracked face. So use of simile. I can't take much more of this, so we're building and building up to the point of breakdown. Year 7, this is your final warning. Jonathan Dimbleby, put your phone away and do some work. Now. My voice had cracked at the final syllable. They could smell blood. Only if you get a life, you idiot, he said, whilst high-fiving his jackal-like colleagues who found the joke incredibly amusing. I could feel my body begin to tremor, like a cup of water on a 20th floor desk just before a natural disaster struck. Do you want me to get Mr. Cricket? Why don't you deal with it, sir? Said another of the vultures in the back of the room, whilst he masticated heavily on some kind of sugared disease. Because he can't, he's a failure, said a pupil who at one stage I relied upon as an ally. Failure, failure, the class began to scream at me. Loser, failure, the rain replied as I looked towards the window and my only chance of escape. Be quiet, shut up, shut. The tremor had now become a shake. The crystal clear image of tyranny had now become clouded, misty as the tears of defeat began to well in my eyes. I faintly heard each tear duct bellow, what a crybaby, what a failure. So now it feels like the whole world is mocking him. I began backing into the corner of the room as the world around me fogged up and the pupils began to appear taller, more vicious as they pointed and laughed at my displeasure. How could anyone be so cruel? I didn't know what to do, so I wept. I wept like a small child who longed for their mother to get them out of the high chair because they longed for a cuddle which offered safety and comfort. I wept like a small child who had just fallen over and bumped their knee. I wept like a man who had lost all control of his life and was being ridiculed by a bunch of uncaring people who longed for this day. No one helped. The rebellion became louder, desks thrown about, chairs out of the window. Some were even thrown in my general direction as I lay fetally across a chair on my desk, hoping for the rain to stop tormenting me, praying that this was all some kind of a nightmare. The knell sounded to signal the end of the lesson. As they laughed their way out of the classroom, throwing their gum and anything else they could find at me, I could hear their barbaric grunts as they ran down the echoing corridors, whilst I continued to sob at my failure. Alone, sobbing as the rain continued to harass me, and the sound of footsteps could be heard ominously echoing towards my former haven. Okay, and I've also included some vocabulary there for you at the end. But you can see, that all we've included is the elements required of a creative writing piece. I made sure I remembered what each piece of writing should have for it to be A star. And that's exactly what you need to do. But I would say for creative writing, the most important thing is to be imaginative, be descriptive, and keep to the overall outline of your plot. If you do all those things, you're guaranteed to achieve very good, if not perfect marks. So thank you guys, keep working hard, and see you soon.